So they're saying that Jauan Jennings has a calf injury, and we did see him limp off the field about a week ago. So I actually don't doubt that he has a calf injury, but there are increasing questions regarding whether or not this is a little bit more complicated when it comes to his absence over the past 6 practices. It even seemed that Richard Sherman on his podcast the other day implied that there might be more going on here. Sherman then said that he doesn't know exactly what's going on, may not be that plugged into the situation, although Sherm was at practice today. But one person who is plugged into what is going on is Kyle Shanahan. And today he was asked about Jauan Jennings' calf injury. And he was also just straight up asked if he's sure that it's not business related. And I just found Kyle Shanahan's answer to be interesting.
Same thing with his calf.
It's definitely health related, not business related.
You can ask him that, but he tells me it's his calf, and the calf shows, so it's got to be delicate with those calves.
Instead of saying, I'm sure that it's not business related, Kyle Shanahan said, you can ask him that. It's very similar to how he talked about Brandon Ayuk's hold-in last year. For a hold-in to be contractually legal, because the player is under contract, there does have to be some sort of injury. That's just how this works. So Brandon Ayuk had a minor injury that kept on popping onto the injury report last year when he held in. And we're not sure about Jauan Jennings at this point, but between what Richard Sherman said the other day, and I could read you his exact quote from his podcast, which is a really good one. You should go check out Sherman's podcast. But between that and then this funny answer from Kyle Shanahan, where he said that you should just check with Jauan instead of outright saying, no, it's not a business thing. It does leave you wondering. It does leave you scratching your head. So I think that it's a good time for a refresher in the entire Jauan Jennings situation, because it's been over 2 weeks since that, I think, all hit its apex. And since then, Jauan Jennings reported the 49ers training camp, practiced throughout the non-padded portion. The calf injury happened right at the start of the 49ers padded practices, practice number 5 for San Francisco. So we haven't seen him now in 6 straight practices. We know that he's scheduled to make $7.5 million this season. We also know that that is really not commensurate compensation for the fact that he was a 975 receiving yard guy last season. We also know that the 49ers are in a very tight spot when it comes to the salary cap, and we've identified their spending patterns, and I think that now they should be clear to everybody. This team is very, very willing to spend on A-list talent, but they've restructured the way that everything is set up to make sure that it's A-list talent and then a lot of cost-controlled talent, either through bargain bin deals or through the NFL draft. And we'll get to the draft picks in just a little bit. We can talk a lot about rookies because the 49ers also cut Isaiah Neyor today. And this was a player who was generating a lot of headlines just about 10 days ago. So I'll explain why that happened. But still, back to Jennings and back to the 49ers cost structure. To fit under the salary cap, they pay the A-list players. They pay them a lot, but then they have to find cost efficiency for the rest of the roster. The rock and the hard place here with Jauan Jennings and the 49ers exists because he's not a bona fide A-list player. He's not a George Kittle. He's not a Christian McCaffrey. He's not a Fred Warner. He's not a Brock Purdy, but he's really, really damn good. And he's really important. So the 49ers know that they need Jauan Jennings. And I think Jauan Jennings realizes that his 975-yard season came with Brock Purdy, with Kyle Shanahan. His value as a tough guy, somebody who might be one of the best blocking receivers in football, it comes because he plays for the 49ers. Both sides need each other here, but they have to find a way to thread the needle to a new contract that satisfies the 49ers' overarching strategy, which is bargain bin deals beyond the A-list players. Well, where does your B-plus lister like Jauan Jennings fall into the mix? Can the 49ers get another year of team control in this situation? Because that's generally, concession like that from a player is generally what can allow a team to come out ahead enough to want to offer the contract and to sign on their half of the dotted line. Jennings wants more money, as he should, as anybody in his position would want. The 49ers are hesitant to move off of the bargain bin deal that they were able to secure last season before Jennings 200 or there's a lot more than 275 yards before Jennings 975 yard explosion, but they don't want to move off of that without getting something in return, which may be another year of team control. He's only under contract through this season. The 49ers know that Jauan Jennings knows that if he doesn't sign a new deal, free agency is waiting next offseason, which could potentially be very lucrative for him. But there's also risk. He could also, you could always get hurt in this game. We know how football works, but there's also the danger at any given juncture that your production will go down, that a situation will be different, even if you're healthy. And then maybe you won't be set up to cash out as much money as you could actually sign for right now with the 49ers next year. So it is a tricky needle to thread, but that's what the 49ers are trying to figure out. And Kyle's answer today, I think, just does give some food for thought. If you want to hear the Sherman answer, you can go to this piece. This is going to be up on the San Francisco Standard. I talk about all this. I talk about Isaiah Neyor, who we're going to get to right now. But there is why the 49ers made a flurry of roster moves and where key groups stand right now. So we're going to get into Neyor as soon as we read about Sherman. And Sherman said, this is the quote, "I think they're going to have to do something. I think they're going to have to appease him. And I think once they do, there might be a chance he's back at practice that day. I don't know, but it kind of seems that way." So Sherman stuck his neck out a little bit, but then he retreated with that last line. He said, "I don't know, but it kind of seems that way." Sherm, he was around back when Jauan Jennings was on the team. 2020, they overlapped. I'm not saying that Sherman is speaking from insider knowledge here, but I think that he might just be reading some tea leaves. And I think that Kyle Shanahan definitely is speaking from an insider's perspective. And it is at least notable that he didn't answer that question head on. He gave us the whole, you should just talk to Jauan Jennings instead. So it's going to be fascinating to see how the 49ers resolve this. All this contract stuff ends up being really, really interesting because in a way, the 49ers have been trendsetters. They have so many A-list players. They've paid so many A-list players, more than in any other team in the league. They've hit the point where to keep this sustainable, the draft is an absolute must for them. They can't pay your way out of every single problem. So they had a good draft class in 2024, trying to make sure that this 2025 one is good as well. They have those two distinct cost structures. How are they going to handle that area in the middle? Somebody like Jauan Jennings falls into it. Somebody like Colton McKivitz falls into it. Both of those guys on lame duck deals. How is it going to work? In the absence of Jauan Jennings, there was an opportunity for a receiver named Isaiah Neyor to grab a role as an undrafted rookie coming out of Texas, one of the most athletic prospects in the entire 2025 draft class. We're talking 4.40 40, elite 10-yard split, 1.5 10-yard split, 40-plus inch vertical. I mean, the speed and explosion metrics for Isaiah Neyor at 6'4", 220 were absolutely sensational. Then on day 2 of 49ers training camp, Mac Jones heaved a bomb into triple coverage. Isaiah Neyor went up and he caught the pass, and everybody was talking about this guy. I could even go back to my calendar to see exactly what date that was on. That was on a second day of 49ers practice. It was on July 24th, on Thursday. It was less than 2 weeks ago. It's now Monday, August 4th. So 2 weeks ago, we were just showing up for training camp. 2 weeks ago, tomorrow would be the Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch presser. But on the 24th, the second day of 49ers practice, before the pads came on, Isaiah Neyor made that sensational catch on the deep ball from Mac Jones. And of course, a lot of people thought that meant that he was locked into the 49ers roster. And at the time I said, this is awesome. And if he keeps it up, the 49ers definitely won't be able to stash him on the practice squad. This is the guy that's going to get scooped up by another team. But the key words there were, if he keeps this up. Unfortunately, We have rarely heard from Isaiah Neyor since that moment. And today, the 49ers waived the undrafted free agent. Definitely not a good sign for Isaiah's future with the 49ers, that despite all of the injuries and the upheaval in the receiver room, they said, we're going to waive him. We're going to, instead, his roster spot is essentially taken up by Robbie Chosen, formerly known as Robbie Anderson, a 32-year-old receiver who knows the system, whom the 49ers can trust. That's the thing. Like, you can have all the athleticism in the world, but if you cannot harness it and run good routes and run dependable routes and be the person who's demonstrating at least a raising floor that the 49ers need you to be, it's going to be really, really hard for them to justify keeping a roster spot open for you. You know, people fall in love all the time at the quarterback position with a guy who's big, strong, 6'5", can run a 4.3 or a 4.4. But if you can't read the defense and you can't execute the nuances of the position, if you could throw the 60-yard bomb, but you're not consistent on the swing passes and the quick outs and the timing nature of the offense, it doesn't really matter. The fans at practice might like the bomb, but success in football likes the small things that aren't quite as sexy on the surface. And the fact that we didn't hear from Isaiah Neyor making any catches, really, there might have been one or two, but we didn't hear much since he made that spectacular long one. And the fact that the 49ers waived him today tells me that they just needed more consistency in that wide receiver room. But I pair it with the signing of Robbie Chosen, right? That's a guy who they think they're going to get some consistency from. He was in the building last year for 2 weeks when they needed a body in August. It's not to say that he's locked into a 53-man roster spot. In fact, he might not get there at all, but they need to get through these practices properly, and they need to give the quarterbacks the work that they fairly need to get better. They just swapped one of the quarterback positions today, Carter Bradley, in for Tanner Mordecai, who was also waived. So they're just trying to make sure that the floor of this competition is as high as possible. So that leads us into our 49ers strategy examination, where we can take a look at all of the moves that the 49ers made today and go through the roster as we do this. First off, these are the 49ers cuts today. So I mentioned Neyor. That's a waive. He's going to have to clear waivers. We'll see if he does, or we'll see if there could be a team right now that is putting in a waiver claim on Isaiah Neyor. We'll find out if that claim has actually been made and if it's awarded by tomorrow. But athleticism sells, that's for sure. We'll see if a team likes Isaiah Neyor enough to bring them onto their 90-man roster. Definitely more likely that happens now than at the 53-man cut down, with rosters being bigger. So each spot is a little less valuable as we speak right now. They also waived Mason Pline. I know this is a guy who a lot of fans had high hopes for. And, you know, some of these guys might be back at some point. You can never say never when it comes to potential reunion, because the key thing for the 49ers right now is finding high floor players who can give you the snaps that you need at the back end of the roster while the team is going through the dog days of August. They've got the Broncos coming in on Thursday. They face the Raiders the Thursday after that. The preseason games against Denver and Las Vegas are this Saturday and next Saturday, respectively. You're already banged up, and all teams around the whole league are dealing with similar issues, but you're banged up right now. You had about 20 players not practice today, not all because of injury, but out of your 90-man roster, you're missing about 20 guys today between PUP and scheduled days off and some of the minor injuries on the roster. So what you need is bodies to get you through these practices without taxing your units too much. You're going to have certain snap counts that cannot be exceeded. The highest snap count of the season is coming up on Thursday. They're planning their biggest practice of the year on Thursday, the joint practice against the Broncos. It's going to be a long, hot day out there in Santa Clara, and the 49ers have to brace the roster for it. And to do that, they had to bring in 5 new guys. And to bring in 5 new guys, you have to cut 5 guys. So Trey Avery, one of them, Greg Joseph, obviously the kicker. We talked about that in the earlier video. We can discuss that a little bit later. Here are the 5 that the 49ers signed, though, to make it all happen. Bradley Anae, Bruce Hector, Jalen Mahoney, who's been with the team before. Fabian Moreau, he's been around the NFL for a while, 32-year-old corner. And the tackle, Isaiah Prince. All of these guys thrust right into the action today for the 49ers. Ane and Bruce Hector are former Robert Saleh players with the Jets, rotational defensive lineman, offseason defensive lineman there. And the biggest 49ers injury that was reported today is the one to Kevin Givens, the defensive tackle. This one hurts San Francisco. I think a lot of people glossed this one over, but we talked about Isaac Guerrero also being hurt, but he's going to be back within a few weeks. Probably is not going to miss any time in the regular season. Kevin Givens is going to miss a significant amount of regular season time. It sounds like a pectoral injury, the same one that Kevin Givens had last year. And if we go to the 49ers depth chart, we can see that this football team was already hurting at that defensive tackle position. Now, they're not going to be able to put him on IR because that would mean that he can't come back for the 2025 season. So they'll have to continue carrying Kevin Givens on the 90-man roster, and then at the cut down, he can make the team, and then they could put him on injured reserve after that, and then somebody else can swap in for his 53-man roster spot. So he's got to make the 53, so he's eligible to come back in this 2025 season. But, right here, I have Alfred Collins as a first-teamer. I don't think he's quite there yet. This is kind of a mix of what's going on right now and what I think the 49ers are aiming for. As far as the defensive line goes, the only rookie that is for sure penciled in to be a starter in week one is Michael Williams. I think CJ West is on a good track for that. And I think that Alfred Collins was behind the 8 ball, but he's playing much better now. So when I looked at this, I was like, ooh, Alfred Collins, that might be a second team guy to start the year. Kevin Givens, perfect player to give the 49ers like a bridge starting job, right? Be the bridge starter between now and whenever Alfred Collins is ready. Well, Kevin is not going to be ready for the start of the season, given this pectoral injury. So that's a really, really tough break when it comes to 49ers availability along that defensive line and the plan for how to develop these rookies. Now, Evan Anderson, who's another defensive tackle, he's dealing with a groin issue right now. That's going to be week to week, maybe a couple weeks for Evan Anderson. So you'd expect to have him back soon. But because both of these guys are shaded in red, both of these guys are hurt, it's putting a heck of a lot of pressure on the other defensive tackles. Jordan Elliott is one of them. Kalia Davis, this is his big opportunity. This is Kalia's huge opportunity, is another one of them. Sebastian Valdez, yes, big opportunity for him. And then that's where they brought in Bruce Hector. Edge rusher, Yetur Gross-Matos should be back for the Raiders week. That's next week. He's already doing sprints. That's going to be a huge return for the 49ers, because if Yetur comes back, then we know that he rotates inside. He helps you out at both defensive tackle and at edge rusher. And he's a quality defensive lineman. There's no question about it. He won the NFC Defensive Player of the Week last year after the game against the Bears. So Yetur's return is going to allow the 49ers to find much more quality amongst the front 8, that rotation that they're going to need set for week 1. And they hope that other guys start to come back like Evan Anderson, and they could start crystallizing this unit into what it should be as far as an effective defensive line to play the Seattle Seahawks. When is it? September 7th up there in the Pacific Northwest. But you can see why Bradley Ane and why Jaylen Allen are now part of this football team, because they've been shorthanded, especially on the defensive interior. But these guys, Ane is going to be an edge rusher, and obviously Jaylen Allen is cut from the Bryce Huff cloth. Jaylen Allen, guy's light. They've got 2 light linemen who they brought in, one on the defensive side and one on the offensive side over the course of the last week. Jaylen Allen, and it's so funny watching this guy play. He either wins a rep so explosively that your jaw just drops. You're like, where did this guy come from? They have the poor guy wearing number 76, which doesn't look good on an edge rusher at all. But he'll either win a rep with just pure quickness, burst off the football, taking that athleticism around the bigger tackle, or he will get so thoroughly dominated, like ragdolled. They're like, oh my gosh, what is this guy doing at an NFL practice? And it's hard to believe that it's the same player that is going through both of these fates. But it makes sense because he's like 240 pounds. He plays the edge rusher speed, like the speed edge rusher position that Bryce Huff plays, but Bryce Huff is at least 250, 252. Jaylen Allen is definitely lighter than Bryce Huff. On the other side of the ball, the 49ers have Isaiah Prince. This is a new tackle, and today I was astounded. I don't want to say he looks like a receiver, but he looks like I thought a tight end. He's in great shape. Let's put it that way. But I don't know if he's wide enough to be a tackle. I don't know if he's got that. We'll see if he has the anchor strength. He didn't today in one of the one-on-one drills against Michael Williams. And we know that Michael is very powerful, and this is a first-round pick who is living up to every expectation for the 49ers. But Isaiah Prince, I mean, he's done it before at this level. He was a starting tackle for the Bengals during their Super Bowl run, backup for Cincinnati for a few years. So they're expecting Andre Dillard back soon. Dillard definitely has that wider frame than Isaiah Prince. Dillard might be able to run swing tackle. I don't know if Prince is going to be able to run swing tackle for the 49ers. We know that Burford and Austin Pleasance currently are not being entrusted with running swing. We know that Burford is specializing on the left side and Pleasance is specializing on the right side. I'm really excited to see how this evolves, though, because Dillard and Prince are both more established NFL names than I think either Burford or Austin Pleasance, definitely Austin Pleasance. And the 49ers have yet to solve that battle at both of the tackle positions. We heard a little bit from Dominic Pun today, and I know that I was talking about the 49ers rookie defensive lineman. Well, Dominic Pun has gotten to face some of the 49ers rookie defensive linemen. So I would love to hear from Dominic Pun about his appraisal of how those young guys have been playing so far for San Francisco. Dominic had a really cool interview today. Let's have a listen.
Aggressive, powerful, strong, quick off the ball. All three of them do a great job. And even the undrafted guys, Coach does a great job of getting them going. I don't know if you guys hear them in Indy. He's always screaming. So, they're doing a great job. Michael is a hell of a player. He is what they drafted. They got what they were looking for out of him. CJ, very powerful person, can shed a block very easily. He's just got to get comfortable within the defense. And Alfred is just like the largest person ever. So, he's just a problem. He's going to take up two people all the time. And, he's hard to move, man. So.
That's something that I noticed about Alfred Collins from the very start. The guy's hard to move, and I'm sure he's even harder to move for college players. Poor offensive lineman facing Texas last year, right? But because he's so naturally hard to move, like I said, his calves look like pillars of granite. He's 6'6", 332 pounds. Because he's so hard to move just naturally without doing much of anything, I think that he hasn't had to get himself into the best possible position. And one thing about the NFL is that even if you are hard to move, if you're not doing things correctly, they will find ways to move you, or they will find ways to prevent you from getting to where you're going. So Alfred Collins no longer has the benefit of playing against college guys where the 6'6", 332 did the work for him many times. Here, you're always going to have leverage. Here, you're always going to have to get low. You're going to have to be prepared. And it's tougher for those tall guys, right? But you could hear Dominic Pun already showering Alfred Collins with praise. And I mean, we've already seen all that he was talking about regarding CJ West and Michael Williams. I thought that was really good stuff. Pun also talked about improving in 2026 in his second year, because he does feel that he left a little bit on the table in the back half of that 2025 season.
Yes. Yeah, I think I can be much better. As people, everyone, you have a good year and people see what they see. But if you're pretty hard on yourself, and Coach Fster is a pretty good coach at being hard on us, you see a lot of what you can clean up. And that's what we did in the offseason. There's just so much better that could come out of my play. And so, there can be a big jump, then I'm ready to take it.
A big jump. He's ready to take it. He thinks it's there. Chris Fster said the same thing the other day. I think that the consensus between Fster, Pooney, the 49ers coaching staff is that defensive linemen started to figure out some of what Dominic Pun was good at and some of what he's bad at after there was enough film on his game. And they started attacking him at his weaknesses. And he was physically exhausted because you're used to playing a 12-game season in college. All of a sudden, it's a 17-game season. He was physically exhausted to the point where he did not make effective counter adjustments last year. It could be as simple as a hand punch. It could be a shuffle up front. There's a lot of stuff. It's a very intricate, nuanced thing. And I'm sure that Pooney and Chris Fster don't want us to share any of that publicly because opponents would just use the scouting report to continue attacking Dominic Pun in a certain way. But the 49ers and Pun are aware of small intricacies that opponents turned into significant advantages. And they have to be ready to play chess to counteract the advantage that opponents started to gain over Dominic Pun down the stretch of 2024. But he's come in great shape. He said this is the best shape that he's been in. He was so good over the first 10, 11, 12 weeks of 2024 that there's obviously plenty of natural ability there. And I think the biggest thing going in Dominic Pun's direction is the fact that he played essentially every single offensive line position in college at Kansas. Transferred over from a smaller school and immediately started at Kansas. Played on the right side for Kansas, but I mean, he could play left tackle, right guard, left guard. He even played center in their spring game. That multi-positional adaptability, I guarantee you, has taught Dominic Pun some tricks of the trade that are going to come in really handy during this big-time test of counter adjustment that he's facing at the very moment. And the 49ers are really excited that they've got their entire starting offensive line aboard now. Ben Bartch has gone through 3 practices without suffering a setback. He is their preferred guy at the right guard or at the left guard position. That pairs with Dominic Pun, who is their preferred guy at the right guard position. So you got Bartch on the left, Dominic Pun on the right. And to me, that's such a central part of the 49ers strategy for this 2025 offense. If you don't have that interior pressure stymied, taken care of, it's going to be very, very hard to deliver at a high level. I know they did it in 2022 and 2023 with some struggles at right guard, but those struggles did end up derailing them in 2023 with Spencer Burford in the Super Bowl. Dominic Pun was a godsend, especially with the way that he played for most of the season in 2024. But that left guard spot was a little creakier in 2024. But Aaron Banks is gone, and it just so happens that his most effective replacement, perhaps a more effective replacement, Ben Bartch, is now healthy again at that left side. So I think that Jake Brendel, not dealing with knee tendonitis this year, that was also an issue last season through training camp. But I think Jake Brendel has a chance to look a lot better if he's got a year 2.0 Pun and Ben Bartch full-time on either of his sides, right? And that's just how O-line play works, especially in an outside zone system. It works together in an accordion. The pieces are locked together. Run blocking has to happen as a team. Pass blocking is a team effort as well. You know that Trent Williams is going to do his job at left tackle, but how are the rest of the positions going to step up for the 49ers? And I think Dominic Pun is a very, very big part of San Francisco's effort. All right, this is our 49er strategy examination. I've been talking for 29 straight minutes. Show is just heating up. Questions, you can start rolling in with them. We're going to have a lot of fun. You should go, by the way, check out the San Francisco Standard. Look, this is the article. It says why the 49ers made a flurry of roster moves and where key groups stand right now. So we go through everything. We go through every one of the moves that the 49ers have made over the past couple days, why they made those moves now, where they're thin across the larger roster. Of course, looking at the larger depth chart that I have ready for you at all times, you can see there are quite a bit of injury issues on it with the pink shading. Those are players who are either on PUP or just currently dealing with an injury. Some of them are day-to-day. I think a lot of them will be back on Thursday against the Broncos. There doesn't seem to be a danger of the 49ers canceling that practice like they canceled the joint practice against the Saints last year. They're nowhere near as beaten up as they were in 2024. So they're ready to get some good work in on Thursday. We can talk about that. We can talk about Mykel Williams. We can talk about Jauan Jennings and the Kyle Shanahan quote today that we discussed at the top of the show. And we could talk about Isaiah Neyor. We could talk about Jake Moody and the kicking situation. I'm ready for any and all good questions. And I'm only reading from like the last few comments. I can't scroll all the way up because I just now opened the comment section. We haven't seen Junior Bergen returning kicks yet because we haven't seen a game. They don't do kickoff returns like live in practice. It's really important to see those live. So we're going to see Bergen returning punts and kicks, I'm sure, on Saturday when the 49ers play the Broncos in Levi's Stadium. Why did Isaiah Neyor get cut? Because he didn't do much of anything after the big catch. He wasn't consistent enough. It's about route running and consistency. It's not about the sexy big catches downfield. It is about the bread and the butter, down in, down out, being in the right place at the right time. And the 49ers have not seen enough of that from Isaiah Neyor, so he was waived today. We will see if he is claimed by another team. How do I feel about the running back position being beat up as well? Yeah, it is. I mean, Isaac Guerendo's got the shoulder. Jordan James, this is a day-to-day thing, so maybe he's back by the joint practices against the Broncos, but they've been leaning a lot into Amir Abdullah. You can see there, the former Raider is going to get to face his former team next week. Corey Kiner's been getting a lot of carries. So has Patrick Taylor Jr. Christian McCaffrey had his scheduled day off today, but he should be back tomorrow. So keep Christian healthy because now his direct backup is sidelined for a few weeks. This is a good one right here. I think we should talk about Moss. Sounds promising. Moss is not the quickest lineman, but he is strong as hell. And he anchored against the CJ West bull rush today in one-on-ones more effectively than really anybody had anchored against the CJ West bull rush in one-on-ones. I mean, he dug in there. I thought it was really, really notable to see Drew Moss take on CJ West, who's just an expert at backing people up. He then lost on a quickness move to CJ. I mentioned this in the instant reaction from outside the stadium, so go ahead and check that out. But yeah, I mean, if you're strong enough to hold down CJ West with an anchor, you've got something to you. And paired the other offensive line rookie that the 49ers have is Connor Colby. Chris Fster is talking about Colby being a really good cerebral run blocker in team pass blocker in team situations. Sorry, that was a little slip. Pass blocker. His tape indicates that he was a better run blocker in college, but within the context of their system, the 49ers believe that Colby is a better pass blocker. So I'm seeing Moss start to see some success in one-on-ones against CJ West, and I'm seeing Chris Fster talking about Colby and his pass blocking ability. Those are some, at the very least, it's an interesting couple of developments for the 49ers, right? A lot of people forget when they try to make overarching roster judgments, they forget that it's August 4th. We are still over a month away from the regular season. The 49ers have to put in a lot of work between point A and point B before we have a chance to actually sort how this entire roster is going to work out. Thank you for this. Overall, how's the O-line looking? Odd that there's no true swing tackle is the question. It's not odd. 2 years ago, the 49ers went to the Super Bowl without a true swing tackle. They had Matt Pryor and Jalen Moore. Matt Pryor would run the right side and Jalen Moore ran the left side. So it's tough to switch sides. So you don't always have a true swing. Sometimes you'll just take two tackles for backups at both of those spots. So that is not concerning. The question here from Lander Film is, who's on the line in Seattle for the opening game? Or are you saying which tackle are they going to call for the opening game? Well, right now they're running the dual swing setup. Burford is at left tackle. Austin Pleasance is at right tackle. Does Andre Dillard make a move if and when he comes back from the injury? Does Isaiah Prince, whom they just signed, make a move? He has made a move in the past with the Bengals. I don't know. And I can't answer anything until I see Dillard actually practicing. I would love to see what Andre Dillard is looking like to make a more educated answer to your question. But good question, and thank you. Super Chat stole your question away, but I didn't. I'm going to go out and put your question up on the screen. There you go. Prayers up for Greg Papa dealing with a cancer diagnosis. Kyle Shanahan today in his press conference passed on some well wishes to Greg Papa. I know that we already have on this show, but definitely not something that we're afraid of doing twice. Chris Connley was at practice, not as a player. He retired. Chris Connley retired at the beginning of this summer period after OTAs, but he was at practice, and so was Richard Sherman. Both of those guys were there. Cool to see Chris Connley was walking over near the sideline. He was a good 49er for a couple years there. I mean, we would still be talking about the work that Chris Connley put in at gunner in that Super Bowl loss to the Chiefs. We'd still be talking about that had the 49ers won the game. And it wasn't Chris Connley's fault that they lost that game. We'll put it that way. So, he downed multiple kicks inside the 10. One of them might have been inside the 5. There was some elite punt gunning work in that Super Bowl 58. And Chris Connley was also playing a significant offensive role. He caught a deep out from Purdy against I think it was the Packers game. Yeah, it was the Packers game 2 weeks prior to divisional playoffs. There was a massive deep out completion, good timing route. Trust was there between Brock Purdy and Greg Papa just texted me. Awesome. We just heard from Greg. He said you have a big fan on the UCSF nursing staff. So Greg is talking to people, doing as well as he can. Again, prayers up to Greg. It was great. It's awesome to hear from him as we're going live right now. So, one thing I tell you about Greg Papa is that he appreciates special teams, and so do I. And one guy that we talked about a lot whenever I would have those radio interviews with Greg, and we're gonna have a lot more in the future. I don't want to talk about it like it's the past tense, but one guy that we talked about a lot was Chris Connley. Because technically, he just did everything right. So you saw it manifest itself in these opportunities that he got in huge moments when the 49ers needed them. So the out catch against the Green Bay Packers in the divisional round. But you also saw it in the way that he had that gunner position locked down for the 49ers in the biggest moments. That kind of guy was really good for the 49ers culture. So I thought that it was neat that he was back at practice for the 49ers today. Hopefully Greg Papa is back sooner rather than later. Do I think that special teams will improve from the last few years? I certainly would hope so. I mean, the last year especially, it was the worst in the league. 2023 was okay. 2024 was a big problem. And Brant Boyer is, I think, one of the best in the business. I think he's known as a superb special teams coach around the league. A lot of the results that he put up with the Jets spoke for themselves. I watch him coach, and the attention to detail is there. Today, the 49ers made an interesting move, but it's one that made sense. So they had to cut Greg Joseph, who was competing with Jake Moody. But consider that the biggest problem there was a lot of big problems, but one of the biggest problems on special teams last year was Moody, high ankle sprain, struggled down the stretch. So what did the 49ers do? They replaced 2/3 of the kicking operation. That's the first thing that Brant Boyer did. So Tabor Pepper, long snapper out. John Weeks, long snapper in. Mitch Wisnowski, punter / holder out. Thomas Morstead, punter / holder in. Then they start pushing the kicker himself, Jake Moody. But, I mean, there was an asterisk to Moody's poor performance. It was the high ankle sprain last year. But they start pushing the kicker himself with Greg Joseph. The 49ers now have 24 kicks apiece, so 48 total kicks, practice competition kicks of data, plus whatever other data they've gleaned. I'm sure there's other stuff that Brant Boyer can get his hands on to make him make an educated decision here. But they've got 48 kicks of direct competition logged over the course of the past 2 weeks between Moody and Joseph. The roster got too crowded because of all these injuries and the dog days of training camp that they needed another roster spot. So they decided to release Greg Joseph. The reason they released Joseph and not Moody, even though they were essentially even in the stats so far, I think is largely a contractual one. Jake Moody had 2 years left on his rookie deal. Greg Joseph only had 1 year left on his rookie deal. You can still bring back Greg Joseph if Jake Moody struggles in these preseason games, and he could just sign the same 1 year deal that you terminated today. But if you terminated Jake Moody's contract, even if you wanted to re-sign him because Greg Joseph struggled in the preseason games, you wouldn't be able to get that same rookie deal that still has 2 years left on it for Jake Moody. So all things relatively equal, which they were, Moody is 21 of 24 and Joseph is 22 of 24. All things relatively equal, you keep the guy with the longer contract. But as Kyle Shanahan said, kickers are constantly competing against guys from outside the building. If you struggle as a kicker, a team could always sign somebody to replace you. Moody's scholarship is over. The scholarship lasted through last year. Now, if Jake Moody struggles in a game, 49ers will have a kicker on speed dial, and if Greg Joseph is available, if he's not signed by another team, I'm sure that Greg Joseph will be that name. And that's going to be largely in charge of that's going to be largely in the charge of Brant Boyer, the 49ers' new special teams coordinator. Rank the rosters in the NFC West. Wow. How about people rank them in the comment section? I want to see what people think. So the Rams, this is interesting. I think the Rams have built themselves a nice, young, robust roster, improving defense, some interesting pieces on offense. But the Matthew Stafford situation is getting sketchier and sketchier by the day. Still hasn't practiced. The vibes coming out of LA make it sound like they're about to hand the reins to Jimmy Garoppolo. This might be a Jimmy G, Brock Purdy division. That is starting to loom as a possibility, like a real one. This could be a Jimmy G, Brock Purdy, Sam Darnold, Kyler Murray division. Out of all those quarterbacks, the best one by far is in San Francisco, is Brock Purdy. Now, Garoppolo didn't start last year for the Rams. I think one game there at the end of the season, right, against Seattle. But if he has to take the reins for Matthew Stafford, it is going to be fascinating. That would be one of the crazy NFL stories to open this 2025 season. I'm not quite sure when the Rams and the 49ers first face each other, but it's sometime over the course of the first half of the year. I think it even might be like week 3 or week 4. I think there's a Thursday night game down in LA. But Purdy against Jimmy Garoppolo, sign me up. The stories would obviously write themselves. So we'll buckle up for that potential opportunity, because that would be an opportunity. The video content would also blow up if that happened. But if we're talking about just rosters in the NFC West, I think that the Rams and the 49ers are at the top. And I would say that the 49ers have the edge over the Rams because they have more star power at the top. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to hold, though, depending on what this 2025 49ers rookie class does. The Rams had a couple good drafts in a row. The 49ers have had one good draft right now, 2024. How does 2024 play in its sophomore season? And then how does this 2025 draft class play? If it's A-OK, 49ers 1, Rams 2. I'm going to put Cardinals as the third best roster, Seahawks as the fourth best, the worst roster in the NFC West. I think the Cardinals made some sneaky moves over the course of this offseason that really enhanced their defense. Josh Sweat, Dalvin Tomlinson to the defensive line. Jonathan Gannon gets to work with both of those guys. Rising defense. I kind of like what Arizona did. They already have Marvin Harrison Jr. there. Offense has got some pieces. So I am not mad at what Arizona did this offseason. I think they had a better offseason than Seattle. We'll put it that way. Why can't the Niners get a second tight end who can be more involved in the passing game? Well, think about the offensive personnel that the 49ers have. Kittle's obviously tight end 1. When Brandon Ayuk is healthy, he's your X receiver. Jauan Jennings is another receiver. Ricky Pearsall, he's lighting the world on fire right now. Christian McCaffrey catches a lot of passes. Kyle Juszczyk can play in the pass game. These guys have a lot of good, capable, eligible receivers. So tight end 2 is more of a run blocking role for the 49ers. Yeah, you can pay a ton of money to bring in a tight end 2 that can also catch the ball, but it's going to cost you. You get what you pay for in the NFL. It'd be much more expensive than the Luke Farrell, Charlie Werner rate, right? The Charlie Werner rate was a rookie deal, but then Charlie went out and signed with the Atlanta Falcons, and then the 49ers brought in Luke Farrell to replace him a year later. They were really missing that role last season. So you're not looking for a great receiver as your end-all, be-all when you already have so many other weapons. But you definitely need a good run blocker there. And that's the priority. And when budget is limited, then that's usually what you end up with at the very height of things. And they had Charlie Werner, and now they've got Luke Farrell. Thank you for the super chat. Has Demo been practicing more inside or outside of corner? He's been practicing at outside corner. They've been shuffling guys like Upstant Stout inside. And we're going to do a video on Stout tomorrow. Spoiler alert. Be sure to tune in the morning. Hit the notification bell. Do all that good stuff because we're going to have a nice video in the morning. But in the case of Deommodore Lenoir, the more that Upstant Stout surges, the better the chance is that Demo gets the focus on the outside. And Demo was back at practice today, but he wasn't participating in team drills or anything. Coming off the hip. I would expect him out there for the joint practice on Thursday against the Broncos, unless the 49ers are playing it really gingerly with him. I would also expect him to be an outside exclusive corner this year, injury permitting. I mean, speaking of Upton Stout, those of you who've been watching here for 47 minutes, I get it. You deserve a little bonus content. Upton Stout had his press conference today. Why don't we listen in? Because he actually reached out to K'Wan Williams, the Shark, right? The Shark, K'Wan Williams. He reached out to K'Wan, who was a very good nickel in his prime for the 49ers. And I'm sure that the 49ers love the fact that Upton Stout is trying to pick his brain.
Can you tell us about that?
Really just reaching out to him just so I could just pick his brain and see like how he played a lot of concepts, technique, and things like that. Really just trying to figure out like how I could be the best me, but always knowing like what the standard was before I came in. I just want to see what the standard was and see if I could try to surpass that standard.
So you'll notice that in my 49ers depth chart, I have Upton Stout as a starter. I've had it for a while. I think that's officially the case now. I think that Kyle Shanahan himself has said that he's passed up a bunch of guys on the depth chart. I think he's the nickel for the 49ers. He's going to play 70% of the snaps for San Francisco. Lenoir and Green should both be back soon. I would expect Renardo back next week. So there's your cornerback trio. The battle really is for the third and fourth outside corners on this team. Trey Brown, Dallas Flowers, Darrell Luter Jr., Jacob Robinson. You know, they have a couple older veterans in Eli Apple and Fabian Moreau. Then they've got a younger guy in Derek Canteen. I think that the most legitimate shot, though, comes from the guys over on this side. Brown, Luter, and Dallas Flowers. You know, we have a really, really cool video. I went to Western Kentucky to talk to Upton Stout's college coach, Tyson Helton. That's on the channel. So you should absolutely go check that out. If you guys want me to repost that or put it on the top of the channel, whatever I should do, I'm very happy to do that. But think this was the 49ers pick of the offseason, it's looking like. I mean, the between how excited he was when the 49ers drafted him to the way that he's showing up for San Francisco now. I mean, this is what he said, right, when they drafted him. Coach, you got a dog. He said dog. I think I count it. Might have said it 12 times. Might have been more. Might have been like 19. They got a dog in Upstant Stout. And, I mean, it seems like every practice there is a big press breakup. He had another one against Ricky Pearsall today. And you know what? Ricky is playing really, really good football for San Francisco. Like, Ricky, he's lighting that field on fire right now. But the one guy that's standing up to Ricky Pearsall is Upstant Stout. That, to me, is really cool. Like, when you see a player like it's the rocket ship taking off, when you see a player like Ricky Pearsall, seems to me that he's entering stardom. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if he had 1,000 yards this year, but then you see a rookie standing up and going chest to chest with Ricky Pearsall, and he's 5'8", playing a lot bigger than his size. I think that's really exciting as the 49ers try to renovate this defense. Who will be next to Fred Warner, Martin or Winters? D. Winters is linebacker 2. That's essentially 1. Linebacker 3 is the big question. Is it going to be Martin? Is Martin going to work his way into that over the course of the season? It seems that Luke Gifford opened up as the floor linebacker 3. Chaz Surratt had a hard hit today on Corey Kiner, the undrafted rookie running back. So the competition's for 3. They're really, really happy with where D. Winters is right now at linebacker 2. This is a good one, especially with folks like Debo and Dre Greenlaw leaving. The 49ers needed that infusion of players with that Niner mentality. Guys who thump, but obviously legally thumpers out on the field. The guys not afraid of contact. And guys who are fast. A fast physical defense is what the 49ers have long needed. All right, so this was a very interesting day. 49ers strategy examination in the books. We opened up with the Jauan Jennings update. This is what Kyle Shanahan was asked today.
Same thing with his calf.
It's definitely health-related, not business-related.
You can ask him that, but he tells me it's his calf, and the calf shows, so it's got to be delicate with those calves.
That was a funny answer, wasn't it? Maybe this is a hold-in. We'll see. We haven't gotten, they're keeping this in-house. It's for sure. Even Richard Sherman talking about it didn't seem certain about what was going on. So that's good if the 49ers can keep this from becoming too big of a distraction. But at some point, they want Jauan Jennings out on that football field, assuming that he's healthy. Again, I'm not taking a firm side here. I'm just telling you the situation. I'm just telling you what we know. And I know that Kyle Shanahan had a rather curious way of answering that question. Also talked about why the 49ers cut Isaiah Neyor. I think it's simple. He hadn't really made a play since that big catch about 2 weeks ago. All the explanations of all the moves. Today was a really busy day, so this is why you need to be signed up for the best 49ers coverage there is. That best coverage that there is up on the San Francisco Standard right there. The link to this, I'm going to pin it up in the comment section as soon as I finish this live. It's also in the description where Mike has put it. There were tons of moves. There have been about 12 moves over the course of the past 2 days. If you want the best strategy explanation for why the 49ers are doing everything, including the kicker situation where I explained the contract and the fact that Moody has 2 years left and the fact that Greg Joseph only had 1 year left and the 49ers were obviously going to vie for more team control and they were going to cut Joseph and keep Moody. If you want all of those explanations, the best look into 49er strategy, obviously you watch this channel. You can sign up for the membership. You can hit the subscribe button. You do that, but go up to the San Francisco Standard and make sure that you read your way through. I mean, this is another deep piece from today, as you can see. Link is in the description. It is also in the comment section. Your support on all fronts is greatly appreciated. We're going to talk more about Upstant Stout. Set your alarm bells for tomorrow on both your iPhones and your phones and also on YouTube. Hit that notification bell. Everybody, thanks for watching. Have a great night.